in the horror genre. I'm your host, Nicole, and it's time to share another dark tale. Welcome back, friends and weirdos. I am here today once again solo because, I'm not quite ready to branch out to more guest episodes yet. I still have movies that are really important to me that I want to talk about. And so it's going to be just me today. And today I'm going to be talking about Saw, the original Saw from 2004. And now Saw is such a franchise. It's so well known. But there was a time when Saw was new, before all the traps, all the twists and turns, before, like I said, the franchise. And at that time, Saw was a serious movie. And that time was 2004. I remember when Saw came out. I remember the trailers. I remember being, frankly, intimidated by it. And I remember all the buzz around it and people talking about how sort of unbelievable it was and how gory it was. I had a friend who kind of told me, without spoilers, like beat by beat, like, oh, this person's in this trap and this person's in this trap. And people were really impacted by Saw. But like I said, I was intimidated. And so I did not watch Saw in 2004 and kind of didn't necessarily have a plan to see it, even though I was really into horror. So this movie is really important to me for two reasons. I mean, at the time, I definitely thought it was a fantastic movie, but my experience, the experience of how I saw it is hugely important as to why this movie was such a big deal to me. So in 2004, I was 20 years old. In 2005, fall of 2005, I did the Walt Disney World college program. And that is where you leave college for a semester and you go work at Disney World. Some people get college credit for it. I didn't, but I did it just for the experience. And it was the first time I was far away from home. It was my first real job. I had worked, for family members and like family business and stuff. But I worked merchandise at Magic Kingdom. I worked at the Emporium on Main Street, Magic Kingdom. So not only was I at Disney, I was high profile, highest standards Disney. And so this was just a really important time in my life. I was young. Like I said, I was, away from home for the first time. I was out of like my little bubble. I lived with 5 other women and we were all over 21 or older. So we were allowed to have alcohol in our apartment. I did not drink at the time. None of my friends were really drinkers. And so like the first weekend I was there, everybody came to our apartment and like had a party because we could have alcohol at our apartment. And that was just a wholly new sort of atmosphere for me to be in. And I loved every minute of it. Sometimes in life you go new places and it's hard and it takes a long time and you don't fit in. And then there are other times in life when you go to a place and you fit in immediately. And that's how the college program was for me. I mean, I just had a blast. It was 5 months long and I loved every minute of it. Of course, I had my days when I was homesick and whatever. And, when you're young, you're dramatic. So I, of course, experienced some of that. But in general, it was just one of the best times of my life. And I was around a lot of different types of people. We were all from different states. And one of my roommates' boyfriend, his name was Aaron, he and I were both into like hardcore and screamo music, and we liked horror. And his girlfriend, my roommate, she wasn't really into any of that. So he and I would hang out and do, the kind of stuff like she wasn't into when she was working a shift or whatever. And so one night we had planned on going into downtown Orlando. We were going to go to an Emery show. And for those of you who are emo fans, this is the same month, I think, that The Question came out, which was their really big album. And so we drive to downtown Orlando, we find parking, we get to the venue, sold out. Because when you're in your 20s, you don't plan, you just, you wing it. And sometimes when you wing it, things don't work out. So we were like, okay, so we can't get onto the show. What do we want to do instead? So we decided to go to downtown Disney. It's now called Disney Springs. Back then it was downtown Disney, and go to the Virgin Megastore and just browse music and movies and stuff. And that place was magical. Kids, there used to be places that were multi-stories tall that had physical media, and you could go there and it was like a magical kingdom. The Virgin Megastore is long gone, but I spent a lot of time there. So anyway, as we're walking to the Virgin Megastore, we have to walk past the big AMC, which is still there. And there is a poster on the wall at the AMC advertising Saw 2. Because again, this was fall 2005. And Aaron says, like, oh my gosh, I can't wait to see Saw 2. And I was like, I haven't seen the first one. And he was like, what? You haven't seen Saw? He was like, we're going in, we're buying it, we're watching it tonight. So I was like, okay, here we go. So we went in and we bought the DVD that had like the blood in it and the little like saw blade that would like float in the blood. If you do not know what I'm talking about, you need to look this up. It was the coolest DVD packaging ever. So he buys the blood packaging Saw, and we go back to my apartment and watch it. And I think there were other people there, but it's hard for me to remember because I was just so engrossed in this movie. I was glued to the screen. I did not know what was going to happen next. I was enthralled. And so that is how, after a year of hearing about it and being scared to watch it, I was finally introduced to Saw.
Someone there? I can hear you. Who is that? Who's in there?
Hello, Adam. Dr. Gordon. I want to play a game.
The Jigsaw Killer.
Paul, find the path through the razor wire.
Technically speaking, he's not really a murderer. He never killed anyone.
Dr. Gordon, your aim in this game is to kill Adam. If you do not, then Diana will die.
He finds ways for his victims to kill themselves.
I'm sick of people who don't appreciate their blessings. I've given you a life purpose.
Looks like our friend Jigsaw likes to book himself front row seats to his own sick games.
He doesn't want us to cut through our chains. He wants us to cut through our feet.
Most people are so ungrateful to be alive. Not anymore.
You are a drug addict. Do you think that is why he picked you?
He helped me. Don't believe Adam's lies.
Live or die. Make your choice.
Photographer Adam Faulkner wakes up in a bathtub, his ankle chained to a pipe. Across from him, oncologist Dr. Lawrence Gordon is also restrained. Between them lies a corpse holding a revolver and a microcassette recorder. They find tapes in their pockets. Adams urges him to survive, while Gordon's orders him to kill Adam by 6 or his wife and daughter will die. After listening to the tapes, the duo uncovers a clue leading Adam to find a bag containing 2 hacksaws inside the toilet. Both men try to saw through their chains, but Adam's saw breaks. Gordon realizes that the saws are intended not for their chains but for their feet, and identifies their captor as the Jigsaw Killer, a serial killer who tests his victim's will to survive through murderous contraptions that he calls games. 5 months earlier, Gordon had been a suspect in the Jigsaw case after detectives Tapp and Singh found his penlight at a crime scene. Though cleared, he was shown the testimony of Amanda Young, the only known survivor of a Jigsaw trap. Tapp and Singh later locate Jigsaw's lair, where they try to arrest him. However, Jigsaw injured Tapp and escaped, while Singh was killed by a shotgun trap. The experience left Tapp obsessed with the case, leading to his dismissal from the police force. In the present, Gordon's wife and daughter are held hostage by Zepp Hindle, a hospital orderly monitoring the game through a hidden camera. Tapp, now a rogue investigator, surveils Gordon's home, believing him to be Jigsaw. When Allison calls Gordon, she warns him not to trust Adam. Adam then confesses he was hired by Tapp to spy on Gordon and reveals photos of his suspected affair. Gordon realizes this is why he's being tested. They find a picture of Zepp, confirming him as their captor. As the deadline nears, Allison fights Zepp and Tapp intervenes but is shot and killed. Hearing gunshots, Gordon panics, saws off his foot, and shoots Adam in the shoulder. Zepp enters to execute Gordon but is bludgeoned to death by Adam. Searching Zepp's body, Adam finds a tape revealing Zepp was just another victim following Jigsaw's orders to get an antidote for a poison in his body. The corpse, lying in the room, suddenly rises to its feet. It turns out to be John Kramer, who is the real Jigsaw Killer. John tells Adam that the key to his chain was in the bathtub. It went down the drain when Adam had first awoken and drained the water. Adam attempts to shoot John with Zepp's gun, but John electrically shocks him through his chain. John exits the bathroom before sealing the door, leaving Adam alone to die.
Game over.
So before I dive into the specifics of Saw and why I love it, I want to talk a little bit about torture porn. So Saw and probably Hostel really are responsible for spawning the torture porn subgenre, but I do not think that Saw is actually a part of that subgenre. Now, the later entries, I think probably are, but the first Saw, not so much. And I have a little bit of a soapbox that I like to get on about torture porn. It's something that's always perplexed me a little bit. Like, I'm not even sure it's a real subgenre because, well, first of all, I feel like there's a big misunderstanding about what torture porn means. I've seen a lot of people kind of get confused about it, and they think that, like, it has to have sex or that it has something to do with, like, getting off on torture. And, like, that's not what it means at all. Like regular porn where it's about the sex, not about the plot. You're there for one thing, not for the plot or the character development. Torture porn is similar in that the story doesn't matter, the characters don't matter. You're just there to see the gore, to see the violence. And I've also seen a lot of people, like, I sort of went down a little bit of, I searched for, you know, what are considered like the top torture porn films or like the quintessential ones. And there is no like definitive list. And a lot of people just list like gory films. So a lot of French movies on there, a lot of New French Extremity, which is not torture porn. So it's something that's very hard, I think, to nail down. And it's something that I think maybe means something different for everyone. But that's why I kind of think it's not even a real subgenre because the parameters are a little bit nebulous. I feel like most movies, even really gory movies, they justify it in the story or the character development or whatever. So it's just a real tricky one for me. But when people dismiss, especially the first Saw, as like just a torture porn movie, I always push back on that because to me, it's about so much more than that. The violence, of course, is important, and it was certainly important in the reputation of Saw. But the pieces and the story and the characters, and especially the ending, are really what make Saw so great. And that's why it has stood the test of time, I think, because the violence now, you watch it, and even though at the time people were really shocked by it, it has that sort of Texas Chainsaw Massacre effect where you think you see things that you don't see. And now that I've seen so much more, so many more films that are much more violent, when I go back and watch Saw now, I'm like, oh, this seems very tame. But at the time, it had quite an impact on me. So moving on from the torture porn thing, I think another reason this movie is so important and so impactful is because it was made by James Wan and Leigh Whannell, who have gone on to both be giants in the horror industry. And James Wan for sure will be considered a master of horror. And I think possibly Leigh Whannell to a lesser extent, depending upon where his career goes. But this is their little scrappy first film. This is their scrappy little origin story. And it is so fun now that they've done so much to go back and watch this one and see where it all started. This movie was made with a lot of passion and a lot of earnestness. The later ones, know what they are. They're not as serious. And there's fun in that too. But this movie is not messing around. This movie is taking itself seriously. And clearly the people who made it love horror, are serious about what they're doing, are trying to make a good movie. And that passion really, really shines through for me still. And like I said, James Wan in particular, he initially got the most notoriety, and he's gone on to do lots of things. He's directed a lot more. He's a producer now. He has his own company. But I have always had a lot of respect for Leigh Whannell as well. And he has proven himself to be quite a visionary in the last few years. He did Invisible Man, which was a big hit. He also did Upgrade, which Upgrade was before Invisible Man. And I heard a lot of great things about Upgrade. And I think that was kind of his first movie that was really his vision, where he proved his chops as a director. And then, of course, Invisible Man. A lot of people love that movie. So I'll be really interested to see what he continues to do. But the first movie he ever directed was one of the Insidious sequels, maybe the third one. And I didn't love that movie. But apparently they sort of talked him into directing. The producers sort of saw something in him and said, hey, why don't you try this? And he sort of had to be talked into it because he's a writer and an actor and didn't really think of himself as a director. So he directed Insidious 3. And even though I didn't really love that movie, it had more to do with the stories and the direction. And I actually, a little bit of drama, there's a certain horror movie podcast that I quit listening to because they basically, in their review of Insidious 3, were saying that Leigh Whannell was a hack and he was just riding on the coattails of James Wan. And I already was sort of frustrated at this podcast because of their general attitude. But when I heard that, I was just done, because I think you see Leigh Whannell's name on Saw and on Insidious as the writer. And it's like, well, sure, James Wan is the director, but these movies wouldn't exist if there was no writer. You need both. And so to me, Leigh Whannell was always just as important as James Wan. And so to hear supposed horror fans tear him down because his first directing effort wasn't maybe the most stellar thing you've ever seen, I just thought it was really unfair, and I did not appreciate it. So I guess I've just always been rooting for Leigh Whannell. And so I am happy that he has found success in his more recent endeavors. And although the newer movies that both James Wan and Lee Whannell have done. Even though their newer movies are more polished, you can say they're better movies. I think that Saw is still the most special one. And I think it probably always will be, no matter what they do. So it's undeniable that the Saw franchise is a biggie. It's right up there, really, with any of the major horror franchises. Your Halloweens, your Nightmares, your Friday the 13th, your Hellraisers, Saw is one of those that has earned its place as a important horror franchise. And I think that's because they're fun. They always came out Halloween. The marketing was always, if it's Halloween, it has to be Saw. I think it was one of those that, you would go with your friends and have a good time and see what ridiculous traps they were going to come up with next. So it was kind of this cultural moment to go see the latest Saw movie. But the first one has a charming quality that the rest just don't have. And I rewatched the first 3 in preparation to record this. And to me, there is a stark contrast between the first Saw and even the second one. And so, the whole thing that kicked off my viewing of Saw was this Saw 2 poster. And so after Aaron and I watched Saw, we went and saw Saw 2 in the theater, and I was immediately disappointed. I did not like it. Which that's kind of a knee-jerk reaction with me. If there's a movie I really love, the sequel never lives up to it. Sometimes I'm a little harsh. But I was just this is not even this is not a fraction of what the first one was. And so I think I've only seen Saw 2 twice. I think I saw it in the theater, and then I don't think I watched it again until I watched it for this. And I have to say that I think my initial assessment still holds true, because to me, the first one and the second one they feel so different to me. The first one to me is really about the characters and the mystery and figuring out how it all fits together. And the rest of them are more about the traps. I think even by the time we get to the second one, it's become the spectacle of the traps. And so I really miss focusing on the characters and how the characters are connected. I think in general, we do not care about the characters as we go through the Saw series. A lot of times they either are horrible people, or the movie wants us to think they're horrible people, and we don't get to know them, and we don't feel connected, and we're not really rooting for them. And that's not the case in the first one. I think that Adam and Dr. Gordon are compelling. We like these two guys. We're trying to figure out, along with them, we're trying to figure out, why are you in this bathroom? Why are we here? How do we know each other? Do we know each other? Who is this person that has us here? And so you're compelled, you're discovering things along with them. And as you get to know who they are and their story, you feel for them. And I think part of the reason why we love these two are because of the actors. Now, I do want to address the acting a little bit, because that's one of the big criticisms I've heard about this movie over the years, is that the acting isn't very good, which I sort of disagree with. There are moments that it's not the strongest, but in general, I believe these two. So is the acting kind of spotty? Maybe. Honestly, I don't care. I think Cary Elwes is a gem. Every time he shows up in a movie, I love that man. He's great. And Robin Hood Men in Tights, funny, charming. He's a good villain in Kiss the Girls. Again, charming. You think he's a good guy. Maybe he's not. And I also just love Adam. I think Lee Whannell did a great job as Adam. Adam is sort of a little pathetic, but he seems really sweet, and he amuses me. His little humorous quips, they don't always land perfect, but there's something endearing about him. And I want these guys to get out. I really do. Another thing that sets this movie apart is Like, it's surprisingly sort of scrappy, and the traps are more gritty. The traps do feel very homemade booby trap. While elaborate, they do feel somewhat believable the way they're put together. So the whole world feels just a little more homemade, a little more like John Kramer, has a welder in his warehouse, his creepy warehouse machine room. Like, it has a tactile realness to it that the later traps don't have. They up the ante. Everything becomes over the top convoluted. The traps become more convoluted. And so all of these sort of homemade booby traps make it more believable. And the setup really pays off. The pace of this movie, it gets you to a point where by the time it all goes down, you believe it. You're invested because you've been given, you've gotten to know the characters. You've been given this piece by piece by piece by piece. And so it slowly ratchets up. Whereas in the newer ones, well, in the whole rest of the franchise, we get right into the game, whatever Jigsaw's game in, and folks like immediately die. Although I do love, in general, the cold opens in each movie where we get somebody in a trap and then that kicks off the whole film. I do like those cold opens. But in this original movie, it feels like people have hours. Like the razor wire guy, it seems like he had a long time to find his way through the razor wire. We watch Adam and Dr. Gordon, and it feels like they've been in this bathroom like all day long. And they have time to talk, and they have time to find the X, and they have time to figure out where the hacksaws are. And it's like this slow progression where they have to figure things out. Whereas, again, in the newer ones, you have like 2 minutes to carve a piece of your brain out, or you die. And it's really hard to be invested in that because that doesn't even feel attainable. You get sort of the same ick factor as all of the little tableaus in Seven. And so I think that slow burn pacing really works in this movie. So while the setup is complicated, it all works. And it is not complicated compared to what we get in the rest of the franchise. So by the time we get to the ending, all these pieces are coming together and we've just hit this fever pitch. We've got the detective closing in. We've got Zepp showing up. We've got Dr. Gordon cutting his foot off. You have Adam bashing Zepp's head in with a toilet lid. I mean, it's chaos and like you simply cannot look away. I remember just being riveted by that last like 3 minutes of this movie. I also really appreciate how, back to Adam and Dr. Gordon, it's interesting how their characters sort of switch roles as the film progresses. Because when they first wake up in the bathroom, Adam is just like a scared animal. He's freaking out. He doesn't know what's going on. Dr. Gordon's trying to be like, let's work together. Let's talk about this. Let's figure it out. And Adam's just like furiously trying to get away. So as we go through the film and Dr. Gordon learns that his family is involved in this, he slowly starts to lose his cool and Adam slowly starts to like try to calm him down. And so when we get to that point where Dr. Gordon is willing to saw his foot off and Adam is terrified, like horrified by what he's seeing, so are we. And then after Dr. Gordon does saw his foot off and he goes to Adam and they like embrace, it is a cheesy moment, but it's also so sweet because again, we've been on this journey with these two characters. They have been through this terrifying ordeal and they're finally able to connect face to face. And even though Dr. Gordon looks awful and looks like he's going to bleed out, part of you believes that he is going to get out and he is going to bring help back to Adam. Like you want to believe that. You are in it with these two, you know. And so, of course, that brings us to the ending, which is probably the main reason why this movie is iconic. This movie nails the ending. This is one of the all-time great horror endings. And let me tell you, I live for a good ending. When it comes to horror movies, really any movies, but specifically horror, the story and the ending are the most important things to me. And then probably second would be atmosphere. I can put up with spotty acting. I can put up with effects that aren't perfect. I will forgive all of that if the story is tight and the ending is correct. And so in this movie, those things are right in line. Even though it is your typical Saw movie where there's a lot of moving parts, and if you stop to really think about it, maybe there are holes. I don't care because I'm along for the ride. They make me believe it. And after everything we've just seen, with the foot sawing off, the head bashing in, I mean, it's been insane. We think it's going to be over. And so when that music starts to roll in at the very ending, after Dr. Gordon has drug himself out and you think the movie's over, then the music kicks in and the man who has been laying in the middle of the bathroom floor for the whole movie gets up. The look on Adam's face is the same look the audience has on their face. No one saw this coming. And man, it just nails it. And when John Kramer says game over and slams that door, it's such a great ending. And the door slam reminds me also of the classic Leatherface door slam. Another one of the most terrifying movie moments of all time. So to me, Saw is a horror classic. I think it is required viewing for the horror fan. Although it does seem tame to me now when I rewatch it, it is an important step, an important evolution in the horror genre. As I said, it spawned its own subgenre. Any movie that does that has hit a chord, has found something special, has found something important. And it certainly hit a chord with me. And as I said, you know, I've been a lifelong horror fan, but did not want to engage with this movie because I was intimidated by it. I was afraid of it. And I don't know exactly why that was. But I suppose partially because, you know, horror movies they were not as extreme at the time. Like The Ring came out in 2001. And so J-horror was really big. And J-horror is very scary, but it's not very violent. It's not very gory. It's more of a ghost story. There just hadn't been a lot of seriously, I think, visceral movies. Because I grew up on slashers and those are violent, but they're different. This was just something I had not seen before, something I was intimidated to explore. Once I finally saw and loved it, it opened a floodgate for me. I said, how do I find more of this? Where do I go to watch more of this, to watch more serious horror, to watch more challenging horror? And I think this is a moment that every horror fan has where you are ready to just go off the deep end. So interestingly enough, that same week that I saw for the first time, I also happened to see American Psycho for the first time that week, which is insane to me to think about that now. It happened to be, I think it was on TV, so I'm sure it was sanitized to a certain extent. But that movie also was unlike anything I had ever seen. And then also right around the same time, our best friends next door, the guys who live next door, we had movie night and they decided that Boondock Saints would be a great movie to watch with the girls next door. And that movie, again, was just unlike anything I'd ever seen. So Saw was just this entry into me just being willing to go somewhere I had never gone before. And that eventually led me down a road to New French Extremity, which is, to me, without going into ridiculous, morally questionable things, to me, New French Extremity is it. I don't think there's anything kind of more extreme than that. And I love New French Extremity. The French have a way of making beautifully grotesque things. But most New French Extremity movies I've only seen once. Glad that I went there, but it's not something that I am eager to revisit. And so there will be a New French Extremity episode of Fundamental Frights at some point. But it all started with Saw for me. Man, what a game changer. What a game changer, pun intended.
I want to play a game.
So, I feel like you can't talk about Saw without, like I've already done a little bit, talking about the franchise. And so I want to do just a quick little Saw franchise ranking. Everyone's got one. So here we go. 1, 2, and 3. 1 through 3. I think work as a pretty satisfying trilogy, those three. Same writer. Lee Winnell wrote Bam Bam Bam, all three. That's the best of the bunch. If you do not want to commit to 10 Saw films, just watch the first 3. You're good to go. You will not be introduced to anything groundbreaking or new after 3. 4, 5, and 6, the Hoffman trilogy. I am not a fan. Not a fan. Those 3 are... It's hard to say my least favorite of the series, but I really do not enjoy 4, 5, and 6. Amanda was enough, having her as Jigsaw's little apprentice. Like, that was enough. Like, we didn't need to spin off half a dozen more Jigsaw disciples, if you will. I will say, though, even though I do not care for Hoffman, I did dig Agent Strom, who was also ridiculous, but much more likable. I would have preferred to see him stick around a little bit longer. But the backstory, the timelines, everything becomes more convoluted. 4, 5, and 6 is where we can no longer ascertain where we are in the timeline at any given moment. But I will say, despite all the negative stuff I just said, these movies are still fun. You have to go in and just be like, turn your brain off, just have a good time. And I think you will, because I have. Of those, though, 6, which is Saw 3D, I think is the best. Many people would disagree with that. But Dr. Gordon comes back, and I freaking love Dr. Gordon. So just seeing him again, even though, again, he did not need to become a Jigsaw disciple, but I was happy to see him again. So then we move on to all of the sort of like standalone ones. So after Saw 6, also known as Saw 3D, the final chapter, whatever, we got Jigsaw. And Jigsaw is my favorite after the first trilogy, after the first 3. That's not a popular opinion. But it was directed by the Spear brothers, who also directed Daybreakers, which is a vampire movie that I love. And I think it somehow manages to recapture some of that simple grittiness of the first one. It's the one where the people are in a barn. I don't love the ending. And again, it's giving us like not a different timeline, but like another piece of the timeline. So it does sort of add to that convoluted, where are we? The entire Saw series takes place over like 2 years, which is insane if you think about it. So then after Jigsaw, we got Spiral. That was the Chris Rock one. I can't really weigh in on this because I think I watched like half of it and didn't finish it. It also kind of doesn't count because it's a copycat. From what I understand, it's a copycat. But I do admire the swing. It's cool that they try to do something different without adding to, again, the timeline of John Kramer. And then we come to Saw X, which I just watched a couple days ago. Again, I appreciate the standalone that does not attempt to add to the cast of characters or the lore. It's like, this is John and Amanda. It's just a different part of their story. But this movie has no right to be 2 hours long. The first Saw was 1 hour 45. I do not understand why this movie is 2 hours long. And as I've already said, I think that Jigsaw did the standalone, several people in one trap situation. I think Jigsaw pulled that off better than Saw X. So I don't know. It seems that people are kind of torn on Saw X. Some people really love it. A lot of the people that I know and trust do not love it. But there we are. And I think that the Wanell and Bousman sequels, which are 2 and 3, are the strongest. And then the Kevin Grudert directed sequels, which are 4, 5, 6, and Saw X, are the weakest. And Kevin Grudert is set to helm the next Saw movie, which is allegedly coming out this year. So I do not have a lot of hope for the next one. Will I watch it? Absolutely. You know, if we're going to keep the Saw franchise going, I would love to see a sneaky Saw movie. And what I mean by that is that I think it would be great for someone to write a script that is not obviously Saw and is not marketed as Saw. It's just a really good, solid story. And then somewhere along the way, it is revealed to us, this is Jigsaw. This is a Saw movie. I do not know how you accomplish that because of this whole convoluted timeline problem. And as I said, we've already seen John Kramer cram tons of stuff into a shortened timeline. And I don't really think you can do Saw without John Kramer. Tobin Bell he's the star of the show in all of these movies, even the ones I don't love. He's become a horror icon. He's nailing it. So, you know, do you try to do one without him? I mean, that's what Spiral did and it didn't work. So I don't know, but I would love to see a sneaky Saw movie. And then, of course, this is a franchise known for their traps. And you could spend an entire episode talking about just Saw traps. These are the bread and butter, not of the first one, but of the franchise. And I have a couple that are near and dear to my heart. The reverse bear trap from the first one is the icon, is the one you remember the most. So I have to say that one is the best. But the one that sticks with me the most apart from that is the rack scene from part 3. And that is the one where the guy has his arms and his legs and his head strapped into this metal contraption and it very slowly twists his limbs. When I think about Saw traps, that is the one that comes to mind. And it is the first one that I could not watch all the way through. I remember covering my eyes because I did not want to see it. There have been way more gruesome traps since that one. But man, that's the one that really, really sticks with me. So if you like Saw, if you've watched the entire Saw franchise and you think, you know, what else out there can scratch the Saw itch? It's a little difficult for me because, as I said, torture porn as a genre is hard to nail down. And I don't really know that anybody really would say they enjoy the torture porn subgenre. So it's a little bit difficult to make recommendations that are similar to Saw in that way. But there are a couple. Definitely Hostel. Hostel is a movie that I think I've only seen once. I really think the premise is strong. I don't really like the characters. Eli Roth as a director is someone who I have a complicated relationship with because I really like some of his concepts, but I almost always hate his characters. They make me feel gross. But I do think, like I said, the concept of Hostel is very good. And there's lots of like very specific violence in that movie. Also, The Collector and The Collected, like the Collector series, those are pretty solid. And I think kind of fun. Those are kind of, to me, sort of in between like slasher and Saw. And then moving on from sort of that vibe, I would say if you have not checked out James Wan and Lee Wanell's early movie, Dead Silence, you got to do it. It was their first movie, I think, after Saw. It was not received well. I loved it. There is an all-time great horror villain, female horror villain in that movie. And it's kind of got sort of like a it's got a charm to it. It's got a small town, almost 50s vibe to it. To me, it feels kind of pure in that way. And I think that's part of what people didn't like about it, was this sort of like a little bit of a campy tone that maybe they weren't expecting after seeing Saw. But it's a ventriloquist dummy in it. Like, not haunted, but it's got an evil ventriloquist dummy in it. So anyway, and the set pieces are beautiful, and give Dead Silence a chance. Go in expecting something a little quirky. Give it a chance. And then finally, I will say the Final Destination series would be a good pairing with Saw, because of course people are getting killed in these outlandish, bizarre ways. And you're just waiting to see what happens next. How is the next person going to die? And so it is less gruesome than Saw, but it has that same sort of tense anticipation that Saw has. So if you've not checked out the Final Destination series, watch them all. Just like Saw, some are going to be better than others. The first one's probably the strongest, but they are all a lot of fun. So thanks for joining me today. I had a lot of fun revisiting this movie and thinking about the time in my life in which I saw it. This fall will be 20 years since I did the college program at Disney. It'll be 20 years since I first watched Saw. And for me, just reflecting on this time, it's apparent that both my experience there and watching this movie in a lot of ways was sort of me leaving childhood and really entering adulthood. Not to get too sappy, but really like that time in my life, just being away from home for the first time, really being truly on my own. I look back and I just know that was such an important time in my life. And watching Saw at that time also made me a more serious horror fan, I think. That is when I started to think more deeply about horror, about what it really means, about what it means to challenge yourself and watching things that maybe you're uncomfortable with. And so now, even though in a lot of ways Saw and the Saw franchise is a very silly thing, to me is very serious and very personal, which is what the series Fundamental Frights is all about. But because of that, because of the time in my life, where I was, what this viewing meant to me, I will always have a lot of respect and a lot of love for this movie. And I will always be thankful to James Wan and Leigh Whannell for doing the hard work, for being passionate, for being scrappy, and for making this movie for all horror fans, but for me specifically. So if you'd like to hear a more proper review of Saw, there are a couple of podcasts that you can listen to. Halloweenies did a really good episode on it. And then also good friends of the show, the Straight Chilling podcast, they did an episode on it. So if you want a little more of like a deep dive and in-depth, more conversation, please check out those episodes. And I am not sure exactly what's coming up next. As I said before, this series, I'm flying a little bit by the seat of my pants. But I do know that I will be having my mom on again as a guest, and she and I are going to be talking about kind of some of her earliest memories of horror, and we're also going to be talking about a horror movie from my childhood. I don't want to reveal what it is just yet, but that one's going to be coming in a couple of months, so I'm not exactly sure what April will hold. But, you know, keep an eye on socials. And like I said last month, I'll let you know when I know. So try to be thankful for your life, lest you find yourself in a saw trap. And until next time, stay spooky.